And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey here with another edition of Looking Back with Lynskey. And we have quite a guest today, an old friend of mine, a true Renaissance man, teacher, coach, journalist, attorney, Little League managerial legend, and now one of the most successful sports agents in Major League Baseball and the NFL, a Columbus Hall of Famer, a man of faith, a man for all seasons, from the legendary class of 1977. Please welcome Mr. Mark Rodgers. Mark, good to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you, John, and really an honor. And after all of these years of watching everything that you have done for Columbus High School and the amazing podcasts you have done, and we'll talk about some of the other things you're still doing, but it's an honor to be here with you because you among a very small group really define what a Columbus legend and legacy really is. So I'm honored to be on with you this morning.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. And we're going to have fun today. And no better place to start than the beginning. And you're from a large family, as I was from a large family. And how did you get to Columbus High School, Mark? How did
it was always, the night I went into the Hall of Fame, I told a story. When I was growing up, I lived down the street from a family, the Caputas, and Michael Caputa was a Columbus High grad, and his dad, Lou, had been the principal for years and years and years at Killian High School. And when I was in fourth grade, he took Michael and I to the Columbus High Killian football game. And Killian just absolutely slaughtered Columbus High School. But I remember being fascinated by everything about Columbus that night. And from that night on, it was always my dream, my goal to go to Columbus. Of course, I grew up in a large family, 5 sisters, 2 brothers. We all went to St. Teresa Catholic School. We all graduated from there. And we all went on to Catholic high schools. And so Columbus was a logical extension for me. But, it was just something, John, that was always a goal. It was always a dream. And that's, big Catholic family, and that's what we just did. We followed that path. So
absolutely,
yeah,
that's what you did. And we were fortunate, Mark. We went to school at just a great time. The mid '70s were full of adventure at Columbus High School, and yes, we were a very good academic school, and we were emerging as an athletic power, and you and I saw the beginnings, particularly in football, the growth into. We always played hard, but then Columbus learned how to win, and it was fun to be part of it. And your class of '77, my God, you talk about legendary characters. I mean, men of character, but also just flat out characters. The list goes on, and you guys have been so successful. I mean, from yourself to Ray Aberdeen to Eric Evans, my dear friend Larry Lesbrance, Mike Audie, John DeFeeti. We can keep going, and Dan Mulligan, Pat Gleber, the legendary Mike Riley. You've got to be very proud to be a member of that class.
I am, and so many of those names, so many of those gentlemen are still good friends today. Unfortunately, we've lost some of our legends as well. I think of the Tom Shileens, who was our class president, who was president of CBS, who passed away a few years ago. We've lost some legends, and that makes you sad, but it all makes you feel fortunate that you had the opportunity to spend some part of your life with them. But John, I'd like to say here that we all came in as legends. We didn't. Columbus High helped us find out who we really were and give us a purpose and allow our energy and our passions to be controlled enough to figure out how to use those successfully. I think of all the gentlemen you didn't mention who are doctors, who are lawyers. I think about what Louis has done.
What Louis has done.
Who's, what was one of my good friends and what he's done. And then, but you know what? It's what they've done is wonderful, but what they continue to do is even better because they support Columbus. They're always involved in what we're doing at Columbus, and they support Columbus financially as well, which is not the whole purpose of this, but it's nice that they feel so good about the school that they continue to do that. Yeah, I feel blessed. I'll tell you, John, that the class of '76 was another amazing class, and we got to follow them And there were some big footprints in front of us, with the Mike Whittingtons and the Jeff Sawyers and that was Marty Chouette's class in basketball. And, the brother Kevin's basketball dynasty was building at the time. And there's so many great things going on. And we followed them. We stayed quiet. We followed their path because they were great leaders. And I feel as blessed about that as anything.
You just mentioned Lou Aguilera. What's great about Columbus is, yes, I mean, I knew you well and all the other guys. I didn't know Lou in high school. And yet he has done so much for Columbus. We've become very close. And that's the beauty of it, is we circle back and we never forget our roots, and we augment those roots and new relationships form. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Lou was one of those, he was quiet. He was a tremendous artist, very eclectic, very bright, quiet guy, got it done in so many different ways, and a difficult background. And, back then, John, we had so many classmates and so many friends whose parents had come over from Cuba, and who some of them had been born in Cuba, and some of their families had been split. Louis was one of those families, and they had to, they overcame real hardship. I mean, real hardship. And I think that's the part of the character building that went on back then, was learning how to overcome, right? It's, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you deal with it. And Louis is an example of a guy that took advantage of that 90%, understood the blessing he had to go to Christopher Columbus High School, and then capitalize on that for, really for the rest of his life.
Absolutely. And Mark, when you were at Columbus, it was obvious you had a love for sports and a love for the written word. You wrote for the Log, and I remember how well crafted your articles were. And where did your love of the written word come from, Mark?
It's a really good question. When I was 8 years old, here I go back to 8 years old again. When I was 8 years old, my mom and dad for Christmas got me a subscription to Sports Illustrated. And back then, Sports Illustrated was weekly, and every Thursday it arrived at 500 Alcazar Avenue in Coral Gables, Florida. And every Thursday I'd run home from school, and I couldn't wait to get it. And I literally read it from cover to cover every week. Some of the best sports writing that ever occurred back in those days on Sports Illustrated. Some of the great writers. And I loved, back then, John, you're watching maybe one NFL game a weekend. You're watching one college football game a weekend, and you had to rely on the weekly magazines, and the Miami Herald for that matter. You had to rely on them for the account of what happened, because you didn't get to watch it. So graphically, you could put yourself into the game by reading their prose. And, Edwin Pope, grew up reading Edwin Pope in the Miami Herald. And I admired them, and I loved their writing. And so I just, it was organically writing. And, when I went to Columbus, it was the first place I went, was a meeting for anybody interested in writing for the Log. And was able to write there as a freshman, and then, became sports editor and all those wonderful things. But I'll tell you, there was a continuation. I wrote a bunch of words on a piece of paper, and I wrote from really my heart and my soul. And I was probably not very, I was probably pretty biased toward Columbus. But, my senior year, we got a new teacher at Columbus High School named Fred Panzer. And Fred taught me how to write. I'll never forget the first assignment I turned in. I probably got a D on it. And I thought I was the best writer in the world as a senior in high school. I knew nothing about writing. And he brought me out of the box and made me get out of my own little box in my own little place that I was living, and learn how to use words, short sentences, punctuations, short paragraphs. I remember, I became the master of the one-word paragraph later on when I was working at the Miami Herald. And somebody once asked me, where did you start doing that? And I said, man, I told him about Fred Panzer. And, Fred gave me that love of writing. And I tell you what else Fred did. And this is what everybody at Columbus who really was engaged understands. It was Fred Panzer's feedback. It was his instruction. It was his love of the word and teaching the word that gave me the courage when I was a freshman at college at Miami-Dade to apply for a job at the Miami Herald writing sports. And I got that job. And, if I don't meet Fred Panzer, I don't even apply for that job. There's no way I would have done that. And, that really led to my, early career in journalism, both in print and electronic. But just again, you connect the dots from being an eighth-year-old reading Sports Illustrated to Fred Panzer to the Miami Herald. and then all the other great things that have happened. But again, Fred was one of those people. He'll never understand, I don't think, the influence, the power that he had over us, at the time, searching for something, and him kind of directing us in the path that he felt we were best suited to follow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Fred was the master of less is more when you're writing. Why say it in 200 words if you can say it in 20? And Sports Illustrated, I remember those John Underwood, Curry Kirkpatrick, such great writers, made things come alive. And then to have people like Fred, to have people like Brother Edmund Sheehan, just a master of the English language in a way that I can't fathom.
Yeah. No, it was phenomenal. And you talk about Brother Edmund. I didn't have the honor of having him as a student, but certainly was fortunate that he came in and was principal my last year. And then, of course, I ended up working for him later on. But just again, one of those quiet giants. That unassuming giants of Columbus High School. I mean, he epitomized that.
Yeah, he did. And, he hired you and he hired me and he hired
He had a weak moment when he hired me, John.
Right. I would agree with me as well. A momentary lapse of reason, but I'm glad he had that. So, Mark, you graduated Columbus. You went to Florida State.
Well, I didn't go right away. I went to Miami-Dade.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Miami-Dade, worked at the Miami Herald, and then I won the Jimmy Burns Memorial Scholarship. Jimmy had been a columnist for the Miami Herald, and I went to the University of Miami. People don't remember I went there 1 year, and it's a long story. But my best friend was at Florida State, Rich Stewart, another Columbus High guy, another legend, and he was at Florida State. I went to visit him my junior year in college. And I remember thinking that, I had 1 year left of college. And if I didn't go away for my senior year, I was never going to get that experience. And so I transferred to Florida State. And I don't know how today, I don't know today if you can go to 3 schools in 4 years and still graduate on time. I figured out a way to do it. But so I went through, I had the really kind of interesting path, but was fortunate to go to all 3 schools because they all, had certainly had an imprint on my life, just in the teachers that I encountered and the opportunities that I was able to get.
Rich Stewart is an interesting character in that Rich has been at Belen for 40 years, whatever it is. But Rich was still a Columbus guy. He's the only guy I can say that worked at Belen that was still a Columbus guy. And enormous respect for Rich. And he had some great runs there as coach at Belen. He really did.
Still the winningest football coach in the history of Dade County football. And you think about the list, the names, the iconic names on that, including Nick Cody's, you go all the way back to the Gables days, and the Chris Vagotises and the Don Sollingers and some of the great coaches in that county. And, our own, I mean, the Dennis Lavelle's, the David Dunns, I mean, and to think that Rich Stewart's name is on the top of that list. Columbus High guy, interesting story, right, John? Never played football at Columbus. Never played football. He was a high jumper, great intramural football player, but never played football. Goes to Belen and becomes the head football coach. And now he's no longer the coach there, but he's the assistant athletic director and very involved. But he is an absolute. Look, the truth is that everything his legacy and his that he's built there, the roots started Columbus High School. So
yes, and we take credit for that as well. We should,
as well we should, John. As well we should. Yeah.
When did you get the notion, Mark, that maybe I want to try out this teaching thing? Was that something in the front of your mind or in the back of your head? The notion.
You know what? It was never in the front of my mind. What happened was my senior year. My last credits was an internship at Channel 4 CBS, and they offered me the opportunity to work weekends once my internship was up, work weekends as a producer and a reporter. And so it was a great opportunity, but then I needed a week job. And so I went in and thought, well, what am I going to do? And I thought I would love to come back to Columbus High School. And John, only, you can dream about doing that because I think of all of the legacies in front of me, all of the alumni, who had come back to teach and were teaching at Columbus, who had done it very successfully and seemed to really be enjoying themselves. And so, I was I thought, well, I'll just apply for a job there, see if I can get it. I went in and saw Brother Ed. It was a very short conversation. And he offered me the opportunity to come back and, not come back, but to be a teacher there. And it just seemed natural to me. It seemed comfortable. Some of my good friends were already there. Paul Manieri, who's one of my lifetime best friends, was there already. Jim Hendry, who I had gotten to know, who was already there. And no news, obviously, so many others. Almost all of the teachers that I had at Columbus High School as a freshman, save maybe two, were still there, which was funny to come back and be teaching with people that were my teachers as a freshman. But it seemed very, very comfortable, and had an opportunity not only to teach journalism and English, freshman English, but also to coach JV football and JV baseball for 3 years. And, great opportunity, great experience. And it really, John, what it did for me is it allowed me to really think forward. Okay, what do I want to do the rest of my life? And it gave me a chance to do something substantively while still kind of looking down the road, thinking, okay, what am I going to do when I grow up, so to speak? Because in Columbus, we didn't have to grow up. Those freshmen kept us young, but anyway, yeah.
When you went into the Columbus Hall of Fame, it was one of the great inductions that I've witnessed, because it wasn't about you. You didn't speak about Mark. You spoke about all the people that helped get Mark to where he is. And some of the names you mentioned and are legends, as you were just referring to, Carter Burris. Talk about a man that without Carter Burris, Columbus is a different school. We owe him a debt of gratitude that can't be paid.
No doubt. And look, that night I talked about my Mount Rushmore, right? Now, because it was my night, John, it was my induction, I added another bust on there. I had 5 instead of 4. And I apologize to the historians. I'm kind of a revisionist here. And I know you as a teacher can't quite get your head quite around that. Like, what did Rodgers, what class did he miss? He didn't understand that. He didn't miss the class. He just decided that we left somebody off. But I remember, it's funny. I remember my 2 first. My first day as a student and my first day as a teacher. My first day as a student, I remember every teacher. I remember what I wore. I remember what I did. I mean, I had, like, you don't know, Howard Popovich and Mike Foster and John Roach and Richard Esposito and, brother Jeff Johnson and Dave Riley. But the people that made it, they all made great impressions on me. But Carter Burris, bigger than life. And I had heard about Carter Burris already. He was already a legend, the Paul Bunyan, so to speak, of Columbus High School, just bigger than life. And then I had Dennis Lavelle. And, my Mount Rushmore, included those two because of the impressions that they had on me, the impressions they made on me. And Carter never disappointed. And, later on when I came back, we became really good friends, but never disappointed. The milk truck story didn't disappoint me. The way he taught didn't disappoint me. Just always true to exactly. He was always who he was. And, people forget his impact on the intramural program was, he ran the intramural program like Notre Dame runs their football program. It was Absolutely. The most important thing in his life. And I'll never forget that shopping cart that he would take across the street every day. But that was Carter. That was Carter. As long as you didn't touch those silly trees on the side of the intramural field, you were all right with Carter. And then Dennis was, Dennis has become one of my best friends in the world. And he was my math teacher, both my freshman and sophomore year. And then when I came back, I got an opportunity to coach with Dennis. And, John, people, Dennis I don't know how much math I know, and he was a great math teacher. I'm not sure I was a great math student, but I'll tell you what I learned from Dennis was life lessons. When I came back as a teacher and had an opportunity to see how Dennis was able to balance being the head football coach, being, a teacher, a really good teacher, and then a really good family man. He had 2 sons at Columbus over the years, a daughter. Dennis and Carolyn became, people that I looked at like, okay, you can work hard, you can be successful at work, and you can be a good husband and a good father. And I learned those life lessons from Dennis, and that's what you got at Columbus. That was the next step, right? You've got mentors, you got teachers, you got coaches, and then you had men of faith. And the reason Dennis was a great, right? We were teaching and coaching at a Catholic school, and nobody was afraid to profess their Catholicism and to express it and to exhibit it. And Dennis was that guy. I think, you and I have talked about it over the years. One of the great things I've had an opportunity, I worked with Alonzo Highsmith professionally, and I still know Alonzo, and he and I are still good friends today. But so many guys that he coached, and he'll never get the credit for it. But how many players he coached went on to Division I football, and the foundation that we have today was laid long ago in the 70s with a bunch of tough kids who came in and battled every night but lost, but figured out a way to compete. And then the transition in the Bob Lewis days when we started winning and realizing we could really win. And then, of course, the transition to Dennis when we won big. And, we go to the state championship game 2 times in 3 years. That was the consistency that Columbus needed. And then the vision that Brother Edmund had that, hey, this is good. We're on the front page of the Miami Herald every day. Yeah. Kids are going to want to come here. Enrollment shoots through the roof. And it was people like Dennis that made that happen. And then, of course, he followed up, right? He doubled down. Kids started going to college. We started watching kids on Saturday afternoon from Columbus High School playing. And we were awful darn proud. And you know who else saw it? Those John Lynskys and Mark Rodgerses who were in 5th, 6th, 7th grade and said, I need to go to school there because they're doing it right. And their moms and dads understanding that. And, you understand this mosaic, this jigsaw puzzle that we have of 1,000 pieces. And they're sitting there on the floor. And somebody like Brother Edmund comes in and picks up the first piece and puts it down. And then the next piece, and then the next piece. We're not finished. The puzzle's not totally put together. But we're starting to get a sense of what this is going to look like when all the pieces are in place. And, every one of the people you and I have talked about is one piece of that puzzle. And it was people like Dennis Lavelle and Brother Edmund Sheehan and Carter Burris and Fred Panzer that made those things happen. And you can't make this stuff up. You could, no, seriously, if you put a business plan together for having a successful Catholic school, I don't, if you wrote this down, you'd get thrown out of business school. Like, you can't do this. You're dreaming. This is like, some fictional novel, get over yourself. And that's what we had. And, that's again, it's never been, and I think, how true this is. It's never been about us. It's always been about them and what they did for us. And that's how I feel about it.
That's perfectly summarized. We all stand on shoulders of giants. And it's a wonderful feeling to have people in your life who were your mentors, who were your role models, who formed you, and then have the opportunity to work with them and become friends with them and share decades of your life with them. You cannot put a dollar amount on that. Yeah. And what we all owe Carter Burris, Fred Panzer, Dennis Lavelle, Brother Edmund, Brother Kevin, we can keep going and going and going. It can't.
Hey, John, I don't want to interrupt you. But you know what? And I need to say this: down the road, somebody else is going to do this podcast, or you're going to do it, and you're going to do it with kids that you had in class. I mean, you are, and this is why you're so good. You're so deferential. You're deflecting a lot of the credit of what Columbus High School is. You're part of that. You've become part of that inner circle. That the shoulders that we're all standing on. There's so many kids that you had. I mean, and it's funny. I know that there's on the website now, we have life lessons with Lynskey, and you have some of your classic classes. And I'm sure some of your students have gone back and watched those, and with smiles on their faces. They probably can't wait to let their children watch those. And what I love about you, John, is, you did it because you love it. And of course, any money raised, if anybody, uses the class and watches it, they can make a donation to the Caring Hearts Fund, which if you haven't read about the Caring Hearts Fund, you need to, because it's taking care of those who are at Columbus High School, who don't have the resources and the funds necessarily to survive day to day. And, it's buying a lunch, it's buying a book, it's helping them pay for their expenses. And I'll tell you, John, people don't know this, and I don't really share it very often, but I worked as a bag boy at Columbus High School for 3 years and paid my own tuition my sophomore, junior, and senior year. We were in a recessionary time. Interest rates were in double digits. I mean, the economy was struggling. My dad's, struggling to try to raise 8 children. And, it was a tough time. I went to Columbus, and I'll never forget, Brother Hugh Andrew, who was the principal at the time, my sophomore year. He allowed me to pay $100 a month every month. And John, I would come in with tip money, and I'd sit down with Pat Bixby, and she would count the quarters and the dimes and the nickels every month. And she's like, you're in, you can stay. And she'd always say, and then it became a joke with her and I, you can stay. You know, we're not kicking you out today. And for 3 years, they allowed me to stay, and that's because of Publix and because I was able to get a job and trick people into tipping me when I took their groceries out, and the old ladies love me, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And yes, working every night. I worked 4 nights a week and Saturdays. It took me out of some activities at Columbus that others got to do, but that was okay because I was there every day, and that's where I wanted to be, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So the Caring Hearts Fund,
yeah,
I get it. I understand that. And so, if you don't know where to put the money, put it in there, whether it's $5 and buy lunch one day, or it's, $500 to buy a bunch of lunches. It's a great thing. But what you're doing with Life Lessons with Lynskey is amazing. And again, I applaud you for that and this podcast and all of the other wonderful things you're doing, because you have certainly carved your face on somebody's Mount Rushmore. And that's pretty cool.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the kind words, and all credit to Tom Kruzak for coming up with the Caring Hearts Fund. It is very close to my heart, and I'm so proud that we have that. So thank you for pointing that out, because
and what a visionary Tom is. I mean, if I didn't know better, I think he came to Columbus High School under a different name back in the day, and he graduated because he's got all those Columbus High, the values and the ethics and the enthusiasm, and he gets it. I mean, he got it from the first day he walked in the door. And what an impressive gentleman, and what a role model he is. And the fact that he shares, let's be honest, John, he shares our vision for the future of Columbus High School means the world to people like you and I.
It does. And we're very fortunate that we have a principal like Dave Pugh, who also not a Columbus guy, but might as well be. Right. Our head football coach, Dave Dunn, not a Columbus guy, might as well be. I would have paid money to be on a staff with Dennis Lavelle and Dave Dunn. That would, Alex Mirabal, people like that, Fred Foyer, what a staff that would have been. But we're lucky to have all these people. So, Mark, you taught, you coached, you enjoyed it, you got a lot out of it. What led to the decision to go to law school?
Well, it was complicated. I majored in it was actually complicated and very easy. I majored in journalism and broadcast journalism. I wanted to be Bob Costas, and I had an opportunity to audition. The gentleman that I worked, that I produced weekend shows for, Terry Chick, left to go to CNN, and I had the opportunity to audition for the weekend job. I was going to be the weekend sports anchor. And so I did an audition, and it went well. I was happy with it. They were happy with it. But at the time, there was a gentleman named Ralph Rennick. And he was the lead anchor. And Ralph Rennick was getting on in years. And Ralph Rennick made a comment to the sports director who wanted to hire me that me sitting on the set next to Ralph Rennick would appear that I was his grandson. And I made him look older than he was, or it made him look old. And so I didn't get the job. And I remember being disappointed, and really disappointed. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to be judged on how I look the rest of my life, that's not what I wanted. That's not who I am. It's not how you look. It's how you perform. And so I really did some soul searching. And then I thought to myself, well, goodness, I've done one thing my whole life, which was sports journalism. And what could I do next? And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll go to law school and get a little bit more formal of an education, and really be a student again, and then figure it out from there. I didn't know if I wanted to practice law. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I decided to go do that. It was hard to leave Columbus. I loved it. Could have probably stayed there my whole life, but decided to go to law school, really not knowing what I was going to do with it. I liked it. It was, ended up getting some good jobs out of there. And then, of course, everything else just kind of took off from there. But I'll tell you what, John, you know what I do for a living. Of course, I represent professional athletes. Every day of my life, every day of my professional life, I am a coach, I'm a teacher, and I'm an attorney. Those are the three things that I do. I coach my clients, right? I don't coach them. I don't teach them how to throw a baseball, but you coach them up, and you know what I mean, right? It's the advice, it's the encouragement, it's what coaches do. Anybody can teach, not anybody, but most people can learn how to teach somebody how to throw a baseball. But it's getting them the courage to go on the mound and go throw it in a game, right? But I coach every day, right? And so I did that. Writing and persuasion, being a teacher, I teach every day, right? And I write every day. And then being an attorney is what I do. I negotiate contracts, draft contracts. And so all of those experiences in life that I give up on them, absolutely not. They just built the foundation for what I do today, every day. It's as simple as that.
And you were very, very humble right there about what you do, which is your nature. You represent some of the biggest names in sports. Let's face it. What I like, yes, we could talk about Russell Wilson for this entire podcast. We could talk about Trey Mancini and Mike Hampton and Cliff Lee, on and on and on and on. Yes, you've done very well with guys who throw balls for a living in two different sports. My point is this. You are a man of faith, and you're in a business, let's face it, professional sports, Hollywood, music, television, anything at that level with that kind of money, it's not the cleanest thing in the world. Yet you somehow, and I think this is a reflection of you, attract the right kind of people. Russell Wilson's a great quarterback, no doubt about that. We all know that. He's also the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year. Trey Mancini's a great, well, DH now, great player, but he overcame so much. And I think that is what your real story is, that you attract quality people, great players, sure, but quality people. And that's to your credit, Mark. And you are a mentor to those guys. Russell Wilson's been very open about the role you play in his life other than negotiating contracts.
Well, John, that I appreciate that. I'd love to say that I've been smarter than everybody else, and I got all that early on. I think again it goes back. I really feel blessed. You know what I did a long time ago, and this is the only rule I've really followed when it comes to clients, and my kids have heard this 1,000 times, my wife as well. I have a dining room rule. When I meet a young man and potentially going to represent him, I ask myself a simple question. Can I bring this young man home and have him sit at the dining room table in my house with my wife and my 5 children? And at the end of that meal, will they still think the same of their father as they did before the meal?
Wow.
And that's it. If you can do that, then you can represent him. If you cannot, first of all, I wouldn't bring him. If I wouldn't want him in my house, why would I want to represent him? Because if you can't represent somebody with passion and zeal, and if you don't believe in that person, you're never going to do a good job for him anyway. But that was always the rule, and it's still the rule. I got to tell you, there are young men I meet today, and they're phenomenal athletes and phenomenal, players. But I know from the start it's not going to work out. And I'll tell you what, I'm not saying this because I'm on your podcast. I try to meet Columbus High guys. You talk about David Dunn wasn't a Columbus High guy, but he's a Columbus High guy. We have a president who wasn't and a principal. They didn't graduate from Columbus, but they're Columbus High guys. They get it, right? You don't have to have graduated from the school to understand how special it is, and they clearly do. And so that's so if you, I'm telling you, if I will promise you, if you met any of my clients, you'd understand exactly what I'm talking about. You'd be like, this kid could have sat in my class as a freshman. This is a Columbus High guy. So there you go. And again, was it the right thing to do? It was right for me. And I feel blessed that, again, I go back. It always seems to go back to Columbus in some fashion or another. But that's the rule, John, and I've stuck with it, and it served me well.
And speaking of family and Columbus, I think it's so cool that your son Andrew now works for two of the ultimate Columbus guys, Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal at UM. And obviously they are going to turn things around at the U. And you cannot find two people that define Columbus High School more than Mario and Alex. And so for you, it's got to be so cool to have your son be part of that.
I'm just so proud of him. He worked at the University of Colorado with Mel Tucker, and Mel took him with him to Michigan State. And Andrew handled the transfer portal at Michigan State, brought in 12 of their 22 starters last year. And then when Mario and Alex reached out to him last October, he was still at Michigan State, and they wanted him to come to Oregon. And then, of course, when Mario took the job at Miami, he called Andrew and said, hey, I'd like you to come to Miami with me. And it's been, again, blessing. Andrew didn't have the fortune to go to Columbus High School, but I would tell you that Andrew Rodgers would be a Columbus High guy for sure. But I'm proud of him. He when he worked at Colorado, he was a volunteer. He was an unpaid volunteer assistant. He wanted to get into business, and now he's basically running the player personnel office at the University of Miami, handling not only the transfer portal but scouting and recruiting. And he's involved in everything they do with acquiring players and bringing players in. He's great. It's just tremendous work ethic. And I told him, there is one Mario Cristobal. There is one. And it's funny, I was fortunate. I coached Luis, his older brother, at Columbus, and I know Luis, but Mario came in after I left. But I've known Mario and practice, and Dennis speaks so highly of both Alex and Mario, but there's only one. And I told you last night, classic Columbus High guy, Mario, right? What does he do when he comes to Miami? He hires the absolute most outstanding coaching staff in the country, guys with way more experience, success, knowledge than he necessarily has acquired along the way. But typical Columbus High guy, smart enough to know what he doesn't know, confident enough to hire people maybe in certain areas that are smarter than he is, but he's the man, right? He's the guy in the front of the room. He's standing in front of those guys, leading them and giving them the bandwidth to go out and do what they do. And let's go, with no ego involved. I mean, I'll tell you this, he's tough and he's going to be great. And I really believe Mario will win big there.
Yeah.
But it's not about him. I guarantee you, Mario will never stand up and say it's all about me, and which is, again, it's a Columbus High thing. You know what I mean? You get it. And so I'm proud of Andrew. I'm so happy he's got a great job and he's finally being paid. That's always a good thing. But what I'm more happy about, he's got tremendous mentors. He's got every day. Charlie Strong comes in his office, right? He's got, and I'm like, he was a great head coach, and now he's the assistant or co-defensive coordinator. Jason Taylor, a dude, right? And Alex, I mean, you go tell me where in fiction we can go find anAlex Mirabal. I've never found him. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Somebody, I don't know. I'm not going to be the person to ever do this, but someday somebody's going to have to tell Alex he's not 6'5", 280 pounds.
Well, you know what? His players think he is.
Oh, I know.
Oh, my Lord. When he gets in their face, those 6'6" guys just cower, you know?
Yeah.
And to your point about Mario, it's very gratifying for all of us to hear Mario say that, whether it was at Oregon or UM or FIU, that the program is run the way Columbus High School football was run in the mid-'80s. Exactly. That's an ultimate compliment to our school, to Dennis, to all of us. And Mario's strength is he's confident enough to bring in all those talented guys, but he's also strong enough to control all those egos.
Yeah.
That is a balancing act, and I give him enormous credit for that.
Yeah. And John, you know what great tribute, right? We all watched the Ohio State game, Oregon game last year at Ohio State in Columbus, 100,000 people. Oregon beats the garbage out of them. Really a great Ohio State team. And he's being interviewed on national television, and he cuts the interview short and says, "I got to go hug my high school football coach." And he runs to the stands and jumps in the stands to hug Dennis. That's all we need to know.
That's a moment in time. Absolute moment in time.
Yeah.
Random question. As a very successful sports agent, what did you think of the movie Jerry Maguire?
I love Jerry Maguire. I've kind of lived a Jerry Maguire life. And of course, people always mistaken me for Tom Cruise. We have a lot of similar.
Who can blame him, Mark? Who can blame him?
Anyway, I love the movie because because it really is. It's a story about resiliency. It's perseverance. It's surviving in a pool of sharks. And Jerry Maguire realized where he was living and got out of that pool and tried to do it on his own, and ultimately overcame all of the difficulties of doing that and being a soul. And not that I was necessarily have that same background, but it didn't necessarily motivate me. I was already doing it, but maybe reinforced that, hey, it can be done. It's a fictional story, but it was based on a lot of true stories. But I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm glad Tom Cruise won the Academy Award. I kind of won it vicariously through him. I was very happy about that, John.
And Cameron Crowe knows how to make a movie.
Hello. Yeah.
He is. I was just curious about that. One thing, Mark, that a lot of people may not know about you is you were absolutely essential in how the Columbus Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony takes place. And you did it for a very long time, and I was honored to take over from you. But what struck me is you found the time in your very busy schedule to make every single inductee stand out as a unique individual. You did the research, you put in the time, you put in the work. And to me, the Sports Hall of Fame ceremony is the best ceremony we have at Columbus. And so much credit goes to you for establishing how it should be done. Total class, Mark. Total.
Thank you. Thank you, John. What was great about that experience and doing it the years I did it was speaking to the inductees and getting their story and how every one of them was honored, surprised they were going into the Hall of Fame. The icons, the night Mark Bonacani went in, and not a dry eye. The night Freddie went in, and his son, he and Maria's son, had passed away that week. And you remember I wrote a letter to his son that as the induction. And
you're gonna make me cry right now.
I know. Yeah. I get chills just thinking about it. But seeing my friends Paul Maneri go in, and some of the kids I coached, and the Scott Demaris, and I mean the names go. I mean Mike Shula, and it just go, and Alonzo, and it just Mike Whittington. It just, they're all in, and touching base with them. Francisco Montoya, I remember Montana. Just kids that I had in class, touching base with them, reacquainting. And, it gets you going again. I loved doing that. I was so honored that Brother Kevin and Tim Plummer and you allowed me the opportunity to do that. And it's such an honor to those young men and now older men to get in. I remember, I'll be honest, that talking to Lou Pytel, who a lot of people on Lou Pytel beat Coral Gables High School when he was a Columbus quarterback, and it was the greatest win in the history of the school because it was impossible. I mean, it was David versus Goliath. And what he did that night, it's still to this day. I mean, there's a lot of great wins, including state championships, but that might still be the greatest upset in the history of Columbus High football. And just meeting those people, talking to them, and reacquainting was wonderful. And then, John, you've done a great job picking it up. Bob has done a great job behind you, and it's good to see them honored and be recognized. And I'm glad we do it that way. Again, we don't talk about it. We haven't mentioned him very much tonight, but Brother Kevin, I mean, it was his brainchild, and he was the other one on my Mount Rushmore. And I don't even, we could write books and do podcasts all day long about Brother Kevin. You just can't invent him. It's just too good. But it was his brainchild, and it meant so much to so many people. And I just, again, honored that somebody asked me, that he asked me to be involved in it, and enjoyed doing it very, very much.
Well, it was absolutely the right call. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Mark, what would your advice be to young athletes about the balance between pursuing a professional career and making sure you get an education? What would you say to you got a lot of things going on with baseball right now. Talk about the conversations you have with young men between balancing, hoping to get to the show or into the league or whatever, but planning on it may not happen. Probably won't happen, actually.
Yeah. It's a great question, John. I represent a lot of, over the years, and still do, a lot of young men out of high school who have potential to get drafted. And when I meet them for the first time and I'm in the room with their mom and dad, the first thing I say is, look, if you're looking for somebody to tell you need to sign out of high school, I'm not that guy. I've raised 5 children. All 5 have gone to college. All 5 have gone to good schools. I believe in the power of education. I believe in the natural process of going to school and growing up with people your own age, and making life's mistakes with people your own age. You're going to make the same mistakes. I truly believe in that process. Now, that sometimes you have a prodigy, a young man who really is so good that he probably doesn't need to go to school. He's to get to where he wants to go, which is the big leagues. But those are rare. Those cases are really rare and far between. And then, of course, there's those who absolutely don't like going to school, don't like going to class, and won't really engage in it anyway. I had a kid last year at John Carroll High School, who was drafted in the first round by the Cincinnati Reds. I was fortunate. I coached him in high school basketball, but he was a football, basketball, baseball player. Johnny was recruited Power 5 in all 3 sports. Could have been a starting quarterback in the SEC, starting point guard in the ACC, and a starting outfielder in any program in the country. Never played any sport full time. 4-year all state in all 3 sports. Amazing kid.
Gee.
That kid he's going to be a big leaguer. There was no doubt in my mind. Jay Allen is his name. He's going to play in the big leagues. He doesn't need to go to college to get to the big leagues. Now, if he truly just wanted to go because he was fascinated with a particular topic, I wouldn't certainly get in the way of that. But I will tell you this, the power of education, we're talking about it all, right? This entire podcast is about the power of education. It's yours and mine. And we're talking about we are who we are today because of our education that started in grammar school, Catholic school. Columbus High School was a huge, huge step for both of us. And we are who we are today because of the men and the ladies that taught us to think, taught us to learn, and taught us to become better than we started out at. And so I'm a big proponent of that. I'll tell you too that I go in with the statistics. I show young men the odds, no matter who you are, no matter what you are, the odds of making it, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's just there. It's an infinitesimal chance of getting to the big leagues and even getting there and then actually making money. I mean, for every John Jay, there's 1,000 young men, right, who thought they were John Jay and never got past double A, right? I mean, the John Jay story is a tremendous story. But, John went to college. And what I love about John, I saw him a couple of weeks ago. John's back in school getting his degree.
Yeah. How about
that's, again, the power of Columbus High School. It always goes back to, I know I need to go get my degree. Javi Sanchez, I was with him one night. Notre Dame, a guy that was a shortstop, converted to catcher and went to the World Series. And, just those stories are tremendous stories. But, the advice is, don't, if you ignore your education, if you go to college thinking you're going to play professionally and you ignore your education, you're going to regret it someday. You're going to look back and say, goodness gracious, what I could have done had I paid a little bit more attention to class. So I'm a big proponent of it, John.
Words to live by right there, Mark. We've been talking about the big leagues and, Russell Wilson. But what I love about you, what I love about you is the juxtaposition, the yin and yang of your life. You deal with major leaguers and NFL guys and everything else, yet you are a legendary little league coach. And you talk about the love of the game. No, seriously. Talk about your experiences at Martin County North Little League and what you did last summer and what you've done in the past, but particularly last summer, taking that team to the Little League World Series. There's a picture of you that's iconic up in Pennsylvania after that last game. Talk about it's love of the game, Mark. And in your schedule, you find time for it. Why do you do that, Mark?
Well, it started really as a kid. I always loved the game. I'm never very good at it. Never, I played football, basketball, baseball like every kid growing up. I was just very, very below average athlete. Had a passion for it, but wasn't that gifted physically. But I've always loved it. And what really happened to me was we started having children, Karen and I. And when I saw what was out there in the coaching landscape, I thought, I didn't want a bad coach to discourage my kids from playing sports. So I decided if I could find time, and I've made time, you can't find time, you have to make time, that I was going to coach my kids' teams. Well, as it turns out, I ended up coaching all their teams all the time. I coached them in, baseball, basketball, soccer, football, whatever you wanted to play, I helped out. And, and did the same for my daughter. I coached her in flag football. I coached her in basketball, and we, we had so much fun doing it. John, they spent so much time playing. I wanted to be part of that. It was tremendous father-daughter, father-son time. But and somewhere along the line, we found a way to become pretty good at it, and I really enjoyed it. And it became as much about my thorough enjoyment of it as it was being able to do it for my children and with my children. And interestingly, as time went on, I realized that I was giving back to something that had been so good to me, right? I mean, I make a business in professional sports. I make a living in sports, and it was my way of giving back. How can I take what I learn every day at my desk, and how can I take it out and teach it to kids? So it's again, anybody can teach a kid how to shoot a free throw or throw a football or throw, you go on YouTube today, you can learn how to throw a curveball if you want to,
True.
but it's about taking life lessons and the passions. And we always talk about pride, passion, and purpose. Every first meeting I have with every team, we talk about those three qualities and characteristics. And without those, you're not going to succeed anyway. And so that was the love of it. And, last summer was just a culmination of everything. Interestingly, I didn't have a child on the team.
Yeah.
But it was cool. I brought back two gentlemen who I had coached with and coached against over the years, really good friends of mine. They came back and were my assistant coaches, and the three of us got together and coached during the season. And then we took the all-star team. I didn't know any of the kids, John, until we had our first practice. I had one of them on my league team. The other 12 I had never met, really didn't know. It was a fresh start for them and for me. And it was so fun putting it together. And then the journey, it was always it's funny. It was always a bucket list. We talked about it when the kids were growing up. In fact, my youngest son, Brian, who's a sophomore, University of Virginia now, we called him the last hope. And he was the last hope because he was the last one that could get to Williamsport. Of course, we didn't get there. But anyway, the long story was that we did get there. And it was, I never forget the first morning I woke up in Williamsport. You live in a village that overlooks the fields. And I just sat there and I just stared. And, I'm not embarrassed to tell you, I prayed, and, sometimes you pray for what you want and what you need. And that day I was just praying at Thanksgiving for, God knew exactly what I wanted and what I needed. And it was to be right there on that day. And I was so appreciative of the opportunity and realized how blessed I was. Just a tremendous experience. And, the last game, my last game in Williamsport, the kid from Seattle throws a no-hitter against us. We lose 1-0.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
What are you going to do?
Well, and I got to know the kid that week those 2 weeks, and he was a big Russell Wilson fan. So every time I walked in the cafeteria, he'd scream out Russell Wilson. So and so I got to know him, and he was a lovable, likable kid with a lot of energy. And he throws a no-hitter against us. And of course, I'm in the third base box. Our guy flies out for the last out of the game, and the kid's coming across. He looks right at me and he runs to me and I run to him, and I gave him a big hug. And I said, man, I am so proud of you, and you'll never forget this night the rest of your life. And I'm glad I'm here to see it. And, I meant it. I felt bad that we lost, but there was the other side of that loss was the kid created a lifetime memory. He will talk about that the rest of his life. And John, every one of those kids, when I met with them at the end, and in our end of the year get together, and I told them all, for the rest of your life you'll put the Little League World Series on your resume, and it's all potential employers are going to want to talk about. They're going to look at you and say, you played in the Little League World Series. This group of kids, it had been 13 years since a team from Florida had gone to the Little League World Series. So the last time a team from Florida went, they weren't even born. I said, it's that unique. And I said, they're going to want to talk about that. Hey, what was that like? Because you know what? Every kid dreams of playing in the Little League World Series. And those men that you're going to be interviewing with, not necessarily the ladies, but the men will want to talk about that because they dreamed about it too. And you lived that dream. So that was a cool part of it.
And I'm glad you got to live that dream. And I'm glad you got to have that moment because, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. And Little League coaches, when it's done right, are unsung heroes. The high school guys, the college guys get the credit, but it's the Little League guys that set the foundation. And so congrats on that. And all of us will never forget that.
Thank you.
Mark, if just some, I'm going to throw some things out at you. What do you love most about baseball?
You know what I love about baseball? I love that a player of any size, any weight, any height can be successful. And let's be honest, in basketball, in other sports, football, you've got to be big and strong and fast. In baseball, you don't necessarily need to be any of those things. I think there's something for everybody there, right? And we have so many, over the years have seen players. I mean, there's for every Aaron Judge, right? And for every Mike Trout, there's a 5'4" shortstop who makes it to the Hall of Fame. And a kid of any size, you can teach a kid how to swing a bat, hit a ball with a little bit of courage and a little bit of passion, a lot of practice. You can be good at baseball. I can't promise a basketball player that necessarily. I can't promise a football player that. But I can promise a kid in baseball that if you're all in, you're going to have some level of success. And, I can't even promise you that necessarily in tennis and golf, because you talk about, today you look on the PGA Tour and some of the players are just
They're huge.
Yeah, and the courses are getting longer and it's so competitive. But so I love it. There's a spot for everybody who wants to play, and that's what I love about it.
If you could meet one player from the past, who would it be?
Oh, that's easy. Jackie Robinson.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'd want. Yeah, godly. I would love to sit down with Jackie Robinson and just talk about it, about his experience and what. There's a lot of great definitions of courage and profiles of courage, but you talk about in sports, nobody bigger than Jackie Robinson.
Couldn't agree more. Who's your favorite author, Mark, or authors?
Well, I'm a big fan of the classics, right? And a lot of that starts at Columbus, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Great Gatsby, Called It a Wild, Moby Dick. I love the classics, but anything that's got John Grisham name on it, I'm going to pick up and read. Obviously, here's a lawyer in me, but who's a hidden gem for me, and you probably know the author, but Paulo Coelho, and his books, and the Alchemist and the Archer. Interesting about him, and so I lived in know this when I was first born. I lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil for 5 years, and Paulo was a Brazilian. He was born in Rio de Janeiro. Yeah. And he was also Jesuit trained. He went to a Jesuit high school in Sao Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro. So, he didn't have the privilege of going to a Marist school, but he went second best with the Jesuits. And that's fine. We give him credit. But his in tough moments, dark moments, where I need to be lifted up, I pick up one of his books. I can open up almost any page. And it puts me right back in the right place. Very, very, very influential, and doesn't get enough credit. But he writes. It's funny, and you don't know the story about him, but he was writing a book with Kobe Bryant, and when Kobe passed away, he and Kobe were collaborating on a children's book, and we'll never know if it was any good, because when he died, he destroyed it. Paulo destroyed it. He never followed up on it, and it would have been interesting to know what he and Kobe were writing about. But so. Yeah, so many, and there's so many great authors today. There's so many great authors, so many great self-help books, so much great fiction. Maybe one of the disappointments in life is that there's just not enough time to take it all in.
Oh, yeah. Too many books on the shelf yet to read, but better to have them there than not have them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does faith mean to Mark Rodgers?
Oh, faith means everything. It's who I am. If I didn't have faith, I wouldn't have hope. If I didn't have hope, why would I get up in the morning? And I believe in heaven. I believe that everything we do today is helping us write our ticket into heaven. And, is that old school? Potentially, I guess, maybe, but it's everything. It's the crux of, every decision. I hope every decision I make every day is faith-based. And if it's not, then I made the wrong decision. If I didn't at least lean on my faith in making that decision, I probably made the wrong decision. Probably and I need to correct it. But it's everything. It's the compass. I'll use all the now. It's the anchor, right? It's the anchor in my life, right? It keeps me steady. Yeah.
Columbus High School. One
word: brotherhood. And think about it. It's right. The Marist brothers, but you and me, we're brothers. We are, and it's what a great term of endearment to call somebody your brother. And it's the brotherhood. And that's that from top to bottom on every way you could possibly think of. I think it's brotherhood.
I think you just hit a home run on that one, Mark. And
hopefully there's a couple guys on base, John.
This has been so much fun. And I think it's been a great life lesson for young people. There's a reason you're Russell Wilson's agent, Mark. And kudos to you for a life well lived and a career well lived. And it's far from over. The best is yet to come. But I've done a fair amount of these, and this one has been the most rewarding, buddy. I got to tell you.
Oh, so, thank you. That's an honor, John. I appreciate that, because you've had the legends on here. Don't tell Carter Burris you said that. I don't want to hurt his feelings.
Carter's self-esteem is fine. We don't have to worry about that. You know, God bless him, and God bless you. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, Mark.
It's an honor, John. Thank you. Adelante.
Adelante. And Explore Nation, I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as I did. So we've got some more coming up as we wrap up another year. And once again, sports agent extraordinaire, Mark Rodgers. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, John. Stay blessed.